Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependent Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Codependent Dummy podcast. Today, I'm sitting with Dr. Rima Bonario. She is a dreamweaver, soul coach, and wild heart healer who draws from the culmination of 30 years of her own evolution to help women experience personal wholeness, relationship harmony, and material abundance in their lives. Rima specializes in the arena of personal sovereignty and the challenge many women face in maintaining a healthy balance between caring for others and caring for themselves. Her doctoral work in transformational psychology informs her coaching, workshops, online courses, and guided tours to historically sacred places and supports women to shed their fears, embody their feminine power, and manifest their deepest dreams. Rima, thank you for being here for the third time.
I'm so happy to be back. Love what you're doing.
Yes. Okay. And today we're going to focus on codependency in entrepreneurial and coaching spaces. So for the listener who isn't in those spaces, I sense they'll be able to relate if they're in professional spaces or academic spaces, even family. So just everyone, I sense it will resonate. So, even if it doesn't fit, just I encourage you to listen. So first things first, Rima, what can codependency look like in business and entrepreneurship, especially with coaches, mentors, gurus, and other authority figures?
Well, let's talk about this from the perspective of being a participant. So you find somebody you resonate with and you sign up for their coaching package or their circle, whatever program they're offering.
Right.
And the challenge for the woman who's been trained to focus outwardly first and inwardly last is that it's the temptation there is to believe that this person has all the answers rather than they're offering you a doorway into yourself where your own answers exist. And we can fall into the trap of giving our power away. Sometimes I call it leaving our brain at the door. And, this can happen when we go to see a doctor. This can happen when we are signed up for an advanced degree, or even maybe this was a college experience or a high school experience we had. Some of this is learning to shift out of our younger years where we are really in receiving mode and we're wanting to learn from the people around us. But if we were raised in such a way that led us to believe we couldn't know our own truth, and that our own truth wasn't real and wasn't valuable, then we'll continue to repeat this pattern when we get into relationship with teachers, guides, mentors, coaches. Hopefully we try to stay clear of gurus, and instead we really want people who are just like us, but have a little more experience down the path. And we can learn from them as guides, but not as somebody that we give over our sovereignty to.
Right. And what might that look like when we do give our sovereignty over?
Well, I've watched this happen in circles where I've been a participant when a coach is offering something and maybe like driving to a particular end point. When the coach has an agenda for the participant in mind, the coach has an end point for the participant in mind, and is pushing to have them come to the same conclusion they are at. And this is dangerous for a couple of reasons. The first is, as a coach, I mean, this is why I call myself a soul coach. Really, I'm in service to your soul, and your soul's unfolding.
Mm,
And I don't always have an idea at all of where that should be. So
right,
while I'm offering a doorway, I'm actually following the participant rather than pushing them or leading them. And then the other reason this can be dangerous is that sometimes people aren't quite ready yet to see what we can see for them.
mm,
And we have to be very gentle and loving and compassionate and a safe place for them to come into their own self-discovery. That's when
right,
it really matters anyway. When we've discovered something for ourselves, it's like, wow, our minds get blown and we can integrate what we just discovered better than if somebody just hands it to us and we didn't have to go on the journey ourselves.
right, right.
So if you've ever had an experience where you're sitting with someone and they're like, you feel like they're trying to push you in a direction, you can feel them sort of dissing where you are, not respecting where you are, not being compassionate about the space you're in. And then, sort of showing you, hey, there's another space here, then it may be an indication they haven't really done their own shadow work to be able to be comfortable with people who are still stuck,
Mm,
and especially if there's something about the person that reminds them of themselves and that it's still in shadow, right? Like, how
right,
that works. And so it creates an irritation and maybe this sense of I have to help this person, I have to save this person. And we can't want it more for the participant than the participant wants it for themselves. And we can't be believing we know what that timeline should look like, right? So,
right,
yeah, we want to invite people out of victim energy. Yeah, we want to invite people to see a new possibility, but it's an invitation and not a beating.
right. And I'm curious, Rima, do you have an experience where you were a participant and were codependent with a mentor, coach, etc., or vice versa, like where you really have wanted yeah, you've like worked harder than your clients?
So I'm going to share this story, and I think this will segue into the flip side of it, right? So how we are codependent as teachers. So
Mhm.
this was actually at the very beginning of my time starting to work with women, and I called a circle together of friends to work with me, really, because I was actually experiencing loneliness, and I wanted to have the kind of deep connections and deep conversation that I enjoyed when I went to workshops. And I already was in the learning all the things that I wanted to be providing. So, but I was new to holding my own circles. So I just reached out and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to read these books and have these conversations, and I'm going to run it. And it was actually a really beautiful experience. And then after that was over, I learned a lot. So I felt like I knew some things. And I was visiting with another friend, and she had a habit of complaining a lot. She was stuck. She was struggling, and she really wanted to talk about it. And she really saw, it seemed to me, that I had some experience. But every time I would offer her some coaching, she would just sort of reject it or push it away. And it started to hamper our friendship because every time we got together, this is how it would unfold. She would complain about something and I would offer, okay, well, you could try this. And then she would say, no, 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 and nothing would ever change
Mm,
until eventually I was feeling really exhausted by the friendship. And I had a moment when I recognized, oh, she doesn't want me to coach her. She hasn't hired me to coach her. She's not invested in me coaching her. I'm coaching her because I want our relationship to move past this sort of complainy energy.
Mm.
And I so I stopped. I just stopped coaching her, and I actually stopped meeting with her because it was very codependent. It wasn't working out well. And then I just invited her to when I actually did have things available that I was offering for pay. And she sent me an email saying something along the lines of, I can see you're moving in this direction and I really think it's amazing. However, I don't want to pay to be your friend. And it doesn't, that just didn't fit for her. And there was this moment where I wanted so badly to write her back and like defend myself and say, well, this is why, and this is what, and instead I just wrote back, thank you so much for sharing what's true for you. I really honor where you're at and I love you.
Mm.
And that was it. And
Right.
it was, you know, it took me seeing that, first of all, I was over invested. I was giving something that I wasn't even being asked to give, really. And so it wasn't
Mm.
being received.
Right.
And then I had to set my own boundaries and circumstances for how I wanted to be in that relationship.
Mm-hmm. So this sounds like you as the coach and her as the non-participant, really. Have you also had experiences where you've been the participant and been maybe in the opposite way, like you participated too well, like you just really like worked to please a coach?
I think it's easy, I'm trying to think in my mind, when I was overly hung up on a coach, but I don't think I've actually ever done that myself personally. I somehow have been lucky enough to just take what fits for me and leave the rest. And I think some of that came out of my early years of sitting in 12-step circles where
Mm.
they're really clear, take what you like and leave the rest. There's no buddy who's sitting in an authority position there. It's really, there are people who have, more experience. And yes, there's a sponsorship or a sponsor relationship that you can have. But I learned somehow early on to just let what landed to land, to really be willing to take what's serving me and be okay even with an imperfect person providing it. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll have find out that somebody's upset with a former teacher of mine because they discovered that they're actually pretty human and they have all this crap going on.
Right.
And then they want to just dismiss everything that person taught. And I don't actually see it that way. I think part of the way out of codependency is recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes, we're all imperfect. And yes, we get to set boundaries around how much relationship we want to have with somebody based on where they are in their humanness, but we don't have to kick them to the curb. I really dislike the whole canceling idea because people need to be given space to learn and improve and grow. And I certainly don't want to be held accountable for the person I was 15 years ago or 20 years ago. I'm a completely different person now. And
Mm-hmm.
so my my thing that I always teach my students, anybody who works with me and anybody who asks me about this, is that you need to take your no with you as well as your yes. So when you say yes to a program, you get to bring your no with you. And I do remember one time really distinctly, my husband was part of a men's group and they had a women's offering, and I really didn't want to do it. I felt sort of above it, like I've done all that work. But he wanted me to go so that I would get this language and get connected to the community and that it would become something that worked for us. And so I said, all right, I'll go, but I'm taking my no with me. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
had to do, was say that I'm taking my no with me. And if there's anything that happens or goes on or invited into that I don't want to do, I'm just going to say no, that I'm going to decline that. And that made me able to participate in that weekend. And I got a lot of really good stuff out of it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you haven't necessarily experienced being codependent as a participant. You've witnessed it, right? You've observed it. Yeah, I definitely, as you're talking, reflecting back when I started my practice, right, stepped into this entrepreneurial endeavor. I joined this coaching program and I worshiped the leader. I worshiped him. Like he just, he had grown this program and he he was very successful. He'd gone to an Ivy League school. Um, he just, he would do, I know I've talked about this. I might have mentioned it even in an interview with you, but he talked about in one of the modules how everyone should try and do 1,000-day challenge where you do something for 1,000 days consecutively, which is amazing. It's amazing. And also like, yeah,
Sounds exhausting.
right? So I was like, oh, I'm gonna do transcendental meditation, which is 2 times a day for 1,000 days. Or oh, I don't even know, like work out. And he really did do these 1,000-day challenges, and it was amazing. But yeah, I would, stop and start, or start and stop, and just feel like this pathetic, non-conforming, non-pleasing coachee. And that's just one example, Rima. Like I drank the Kool-Aid for a year, and then there was a like, once you've done this, like join this program, join that program, and just kept drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah, it took a really long time for me to start to sense what was a yes and what really was a no, what was out of alignment. So
Yeah. And I mean, we have in the US especially, like a love affair with the expert archetype.
right,
And um, and there's a lot we can learn from people who have expertise, of course. And we don't want to me, it's this natural tension between lineage, especially in a spiritual space. So those of us that operate in the spiritual space, this can be even trickier because spiritual teaching, spiritual direction, mystic stuff is very much comes through often the gnosis doorway. Gnosis is like the inner knowing, like a self experience. We have an experience of awakening, and suddenly we're like, oh my gosh, I need to help everybody do what I just did because it was so powerful.
right,
And that's true. And we have to balance that gnosis, that inner knowing, with the lineage work. Like, who am I going to study with? How am I going to get trained? It's important to get trained. Skills matter, information matters, but it's not the only thing that matters. Gnosis and personal experience also matters. And so when we want to stay out of codependency, what we're seeking to do is marry these two things so that we're keeping ourselves sort of honest by having somebody there that provides feedback to us, that lets us know when we're slipping up a bit, or basically, to me, that's having a good coach, but not necessarily just taking a class. And that has to be somebody that's like knows you're not one of 1,000.
right,
And then the other side of it is trusting yourself, trusting your inner guidance, trusting the part of you that can see, wait, this isn't really working for me, and I'm feeling this is creating a sense of failure for me, trying to live up to something that's not authentic for
right.
me. This is the sweet spot that we have to be in. And I feel like, it's just a constant dance. We're never going to find the point where we've figured it out and now we're done having to pay attention. We are just being called to be present with whatever we're choosing to do, and checking it out, and having a talk with ourselves every so often. How is this going for me? Is this still working for me? What do I like about this? What isn't working for me? And letting it be okay that some parts don't work for you. And then what else do I need? Like, having those moments, part of my daily practice is checking in personally on a day-to-day basis for guidance. What is moving in me? What's exciting me?
Right. My mind is going to your thoughts on how potentially codependents are vulnerable, again, in coaching, entrepreneurial spaces, where they become codependent vertically with a mentor, coach, guru, but also horizontally as a consequence. Yeah, I feel like part of what contributed to me really just pushing forward was like everyone else was doing it. Everyone else was trying to do it that, not everyone, but still people were like, oh, today's like day 599. I was like, again, this is like one example, but yeah, what are your thoughts on that vulnerability, given everyone is doing it?
Well, this is it comes back to it, the way we were trained to put everyone else on a pedestal above ourselves, like in terms of what they thought about us, how they saw us, what they knew about us, or what they knew that we didn't know. And so we're looking for that confirmation or affirmation that I'm okay, I'm going to be successful, I'm doing it right. That soothes our body. It soothes the animal body. And we think that if we will just do the things, then we'll feel okay. And it's a complete trap, because eventually what we learned is we'll never be able to do enough things for that feeling to arise, that feeling of safety. When we are locating the feeling of safety in the teacher, in the fellow students, in how they view us, our reputation, in the to-do list and checking off the to-do, it's not there. The real feeling of safety and ease and a sense of security is in here. It comes in here. So we have to be willing to go in and do the inner work and see what are the blocks I'm still holding on to? What are the old conditioning, the old tapes that are still playing in my head, those old voices? How can I shift those? Who can help me shift those? Like doing that inner work to clear out that old programming. So now we can get into a course, taking ourselves with us, taking our authentic information about who we are with us, and then we can choose what aligns and what doesn't align, and not get swept up in keeping up with everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So you've already started to allude to this question, but I'm curious your observations. What's good about being codependent as an entrepreneur, like in coaching spaces, and what's bad about being codependent in such
Well,
spaces?
yeah, beautiful. So let's just say what we have is a spectrum. And on one side of the spectrum, we have codependency. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have narcissism. And what's interesting is that we draw it as a line, but in reality, it's like a circle. And those two ends will touch eventually. And what we want is to understand that whether we're hanging out way on the spectrum of being codependent or way on the spectrum of being narcissistic, what happens is that we make it all about us in an unhealthy way. So the narcissist says it's all about me because I'm the only one who knows anything about what's going on. You all just need to listen to me. The codependent makes it about oneself by saying, I don't know anything. I'm just like the victim space of like, I can't make it happen. I'm not going to be able to get off the ground. And there's just that sort of low self-esteem. And it's just still about the self, but in a negative way.
Right.
And under valuing the self. The other one is overvaluing the self. In the center, what we have is a more accurate depiction of ourselves, where our skills are, where our strong points are, and where our weaknesses are, the places that we need to improve or want to improve our lives. And so the good side of being a codependent, for example, I mean, what's the light side of that darker pattern is that we do care about people. We care a lot about people. We love them. We want them to be happy. We just sometimes, or often do that to the exclusion of ourselves, or we do it for the wrong reasons. We do it because we need them to affirm to us that we're okay, and we locate our okayness in them. But the upside is that we are thoughtful people generally. We can scan the environment because we've been trained to do that. We can think ahead very often, and sort of we've got the chess pieces relationally in our mind. Well, if I do this, then they might do that, and then I'll do this. And so sometimes that makes us really very skilled at working with people because we can see all that. There is an upside on the narcissist side as well. The healthy parts of that is that they don't give themselves over to people that are going to take them for a ride. You know, they are very, very skeptical of what others can offer. And so they rarely get burned. Of course, the downside to that is that they also can't sometimes really engage with and learn from people who have something to offer because they're very much in their own sense of arrogance, their overinflated sense of self. So,
Right.
you know, we want to see this as a spectrum that we can move across, and we can get the you know, watch for the downsides while harvesting the upsides of either end of the spectrum. And really, when we come into the center, when it comes to relationship, what we're seeking is not dependency and not even independence, but interdependence, where
Right.
we are both capable of holding our own and being in a united relationship.
Right. What have, or yeah, what are some of the long-term consequences of codependency with coaches, business mentors, and other authorities? Long term, if it goes unaddressed.
Well, you might end up spending a lot of money that you don't have or doesn't end up really serving you in the long run.
Mhm.
You might end up more confused than when you started because you're just kind of going from thing to thing to thing and following only the outer guidance without checking on your inner guidance. And it
Right.
could actually have the effect of just continuing that wounding, that traumatizing experience of believing everybody else knows something that you don't know, and
Mhm.
you're never going to get it, or you just got it. And then the other thing that happens is once somebody that we've really worshiped falls out of favor with us, that same pattern of just like we can just like pick up our baseball bat and want to smash to bits, anything and everything associated with that person. And that might not be the best path. Maybe we want to make a gentle transition, or maybe we want to pick and choose the things we want to keep and recognize that we get to do that. We get to take what really worked for us. On the other end of the spectrum, about how we show up as entrepreneurs, as codependent entrepreneurs, what we have to do is recognize that not everybody is entitled to a piece of us all the time and ad nauseum. And this was a big shift I had to go through of being overly available to the point that I wasn't there for my child, I wasn't there for my
Mhm.
husband, because I wanted to be so successful in my business and I wanted to help these people so much that I just made myself constantly available. I was tied to my phone. I didn't know how to put down work for the weekend because entrepreneurs, I mean, where it's a 24/7 gig, if you let it be. And I had to really see some of the downsides of that, of my child sort of saying, I don't, what is this? This is not, where
Mm.
are you? So
Right.
that I could see, this is not healthy. This is not healthy. And I'm, pouring out my heart and soul because I'm needing my participants and their success to validate me. And not only was that bad for my family and bad for me, it wasn't great for the participants either, because that's how coaches can get into that place of trying to push something because it's coming from their own lack of self-assurance. The
Mm.
way I operate now is very different. Like, I'm very clear what my skills and gifts are, and I offer invitations, and those who receive that invitation feel resonant with that invitation and are ready to go are the ones that I work with. And I work with them in a way that is honoring of who they are and where they are and the speed at which they can travel, and giving them,
Mhm.
enough of a nudge to keep going without it feeling brutal. And
Right.
that's, to me, the only place that real healing happens is in a compassionate, caring, and aligned container.
Right. Mm-hmm. So consequences, long term, I'm hearing, right? Just spending money that maybe you don't have or you're not going to get back. Yeah, just lots of money spent. You may end up more confused than where you started, right? With this external only guidance coming, right? No internal guidance. Yeah, continuing to wonder, everyone else knows something that you don't. And potentially, yeah, your guru or whoever you made your guru, right? Like, yeah, I know, like, when I started to have realizations about what was out of alignment in that program, yeah, I would just like, I think of the leader and I was like, stupid. What kind of recommendation is that? Like, I was angry, right? And
Yeah.
He'd given probably me the same guidance a year prior, and I thought it was just brilliant. And so, yeah, you start to character assassinate, right? Or yeah, you might cancel in a certain way. And yeah, on the flip side, potentially like consequences of that is that a coach, right, mentor could feed into that. So it's just really this vicious cycle where no one's getting a lot internally, right? That internal assurance that you've just sense is paramount. It's vital. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels vital because we don't know how to source it within ourselves. And
Right.
so we just continue to try to source it outside of ourselves. And eventually, every place we try to source that will disappoint us because it's not located there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And you've sprinkled this answer in previous answers, but to expand on, Rima, what should codependents be mindful of as they enter into entrepreneurial spaces to avoid becoming codependent on others? Or if they're already in that space, what can they do when they realize they've been codependent on a coach, mentor, etc.?
Yeah, so we have talked a little bit about taking your no with you, maybe even knowing what your goals are before you get into a program so that you can be measuring for yourself. I think also taking time on a daily basis to start to develop a relationship with hearing your own inner wisdom and your own inner guidance is going to go a long way towards alleviating some of this. And it doesn't matter where you are in this. If these are things you can start doing now. So these are things you can start doing now wherever you are. If you're already in a program and seeing yourself in codependency, or you're just getting ready to get into something and you don't want to end up there. But I think the number one thing that we can do for ourselves is to be in deep self-forgiveness and self-compassion,
Mm-hmm.
and to just recognize that we didn't get here by ourselves. We didn't get here overnight. These habits of attention, that's all they are, habits of attention. We've been trained to keep our attention on other people and what they have to say and what they want for us, and not to have our attention on ourselves, not to be able to inhabit our own core, the core of our body, our energetic core, not to be able to access our own guidance. And so we just need to forgive ourselves for being there, and then start the work and the healing journey of saying, okay, I want to know more about the answers that live within me. I want to know more about my own guidance and intuition, my own sense of self, and develop greater trust with myself. And that's how we begin to balance the playing field there. So we don't want to go so far over that we decide, screw everybody, I know everything, I'm just going to do it my own way. And we certainly don't want to stay on the other end where we don't believe in ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you add more, like, what is taking time for inner wisdom and inner guidance daily look like?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think it's different for a lot of people. I mean, I can
True.
give you some examples of how that works for me. Um, there's a big shift that's recently happened in my life where I have recognize that not only do I need to source my sense of safety inside of myself, I have to source my sense of ease from within. And
Mm.
a lot of my life as an entrepreneur has been thinking that if I just get the right teacher, the right program, the right pricing, the right students, then things will feel easier. Then it will all be firing like it does for whoever's program I'm following or whatever. Then I'll have ease. Then I'll be successful. And this year, I'm in a huge transformation where I've recognized, no, it's actually same thing. It's not located out there. The ease is in here. And so rather than trying to create for ease, I am developing and devoted to developing the inner state of ease within me so that now when I create, I'm creating from ease.
Wow.
So I'm inhabiting the feeling state of ease first before I touch anything to do with my work. And this happened on the backside of a giant flop. I had a big launch that flopped and I was in the middle of a bunch of things. I tried to jam it in and I ended up getting vertigo in the middle of that. I was like, okay, body, I hear you. I'm out of balance.
Wow.
I have to slow down. This is not working. And I had this epiphany where I saw, look what I did. I added this because I wanted things to be easy, but I added it in such a way that it made things not easy. It was very full of dis-ease. So if
Right.
I created that, if I sourced that, I can source ease. So my practice has become about this absolute devotion to sourcing ease within myself. And that looks like I get up now in the morning and I go for a nice long walk because that helps my body settle. My body feels good when I move it. For years, I withheld movement from my body because I didn't think of myself as sporty. I didn't like exercise, whatever it was, even though I loved dancing. Um, and and movement is for me is absolutely critical to really being in this self-care, self-nourishing, sourcing ease practice, being able to
Mm.
hear myself. I need to hear my body. So walking allows me to connect to my body. I get so much guidance and information from the sensations in my body now. So when my stomach goes and tightens up, I pay attention to that. If I feel really tired around something, I pay attention to that. If my energy drains when a certain topic comes up, I pay attention to that. And walking every day gives me that connection.
Wow.
Then I also spend time in prayer and meditation. I light my sage and do all my witchy things, but light all my candles. And I have certain affirmation types of prayers that I like to say. And then I just I will anoint myself with oils that I absolutely love to work with. That's another way you're working with the body. The amygdala, which is responsible for a lot of our spinning out, that part of the brain is highly responsive to smell. And
Mm.
so by using high quality essential oils, I can bring my body into a place of calm. And I get to lay on my little sheepskin rug and listen to beautiful music and just delight in having a body and being a human and having space in my day to feel good.
Right.
And that's my practice is how do I help myself feel good? And then in healthy ways. And then
Right.
throughout the day, I'm just monitoring that. And I've learned I actually do work a lot less now and more is getting done.
Right. Really engaging in these activities, right? And some of them are not that active, but internally they are, and really cultivating that inner wisdom, inner guidance.
Well, what it is it's actually shifting out of action into a being state, right? So
Right.
it's the masculine energy is our active energy. I love my masculine energy. My feminine energy is my being energy. And so I make space for both. And I start by making sure that the inner state that I'm holding, so I have playlists that I listen to, I have other kinds of things that bring me into a particular frequency, into a particular alignment, into a feeling state. That's what I call it, the feeling nature within me. And I can tell, when I'm at ease and feeling good, and I can tell when I'm crunchy and grumpy and tired, and I just don't tolerate that anymore. It's not good for my body, it's not good for my business, it's not good for my clients, it's not good for my family, it's not good for anybody for me to push myself to that point and to work in that way. And so one of the things as a sort of recovering codependent that had to happen for me was seeing that I'm worthy of that time and energy and effort, and that I'm worthy of making sure that I feel good in my body, that I'm a happy person in and of myself, not because of how I am in relationship to other people, not because of what someone else has said or not said or done or not done, and what's happening externally, but because of how I am being with myself. And so, that's I think that's an essential turn that has to be made, that if all you can do is 5 minutes to start before you get the kids off to school and hit the email, like, before you touch all those requests that are out there waiting for you, give yourself a little piece of your own love, time, attention, devotion.
Mm-hmm.
And as you begin to build that muscle, that you are showing yourself, yes, I'm worthy of this time, attention, love, devotion, it starts to spiral out in how your work shows up in the world, how you are with other people. You start to build that muscle inside yourself, so you will be less likely to tolerate it when others aren't treating you in that same devotional way, respectful way.
Right. Beautiful. Sounds beautiful.
Well, it's not just beautiful, it's effective. So the next launch I had was my biggest ticket item, which is a sacred pilgrimage to Egypt. It's like a $8,000 investment. And I sold 16 spots in 2 days, coming from ease. And I did that without even sending it to my email list, because I had all these people who were already interested. I'd been following my guidance to sort of tease things here and there. And I didn't even have to bother my email list with it, because the trip basically sold out. And that is possible when we're working from this really self-nourished, resourced place that isn't being driven by the need for external validation, but is coming from deep and true inner alignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Last question. How do you combat codependency from your clients? And we talked about this before, so I'm tying this into this question. Like, how do you help them use work to soothe themselves?
So let me start by saying, if I feel like somebody is attributing their success to me inside of a program, I am always very quick to turn it around and say, this is happening because you have done the work. I can offer ideas, guidance, suggestions all day, but if you don't implement them, nothing changes. So the real source of the shift here is you and your commitment and your choices. And I often, at the beginning of my container, and then very often throughout, will remind people, hey, I am just like you on the path. And I tell stories on myself all the time. When I have moments where I struggle, I actually try to jump on those and record them and put them in the Facebook group or our containers, so people can see I struggle with things too, and this is how I moved out of it. And they become some of the most beautiful teaching moments. And they also help people see, look, I'm just human, and I'm going to sometimes say stuff that might feel insensitive or that might trigger you. Like that is part of the process. Other people in the container are probably going to trigger you. This is part of the process because we want to work with those triggers as they come up. And it's about us co-creating together. So that's one answer there. As far as watching, like I had to discover that I was actually using my work to soothe myself in a not healthy way.
Mm.
Like when I wasn't comfortable, something was happening that I wasn't comfortable with. I had worked really hard to not overdrink, not overeat, not descend into Netflix, binge uh, days. But if something was going on in my relationship, for example, that I was feeling uncomfortable about, sometimes in order to avoid having to be present to it, I would go get on my computer and work because
Right.
the work was always there and it needed me. And I got a lot of dopamine rush from that. I got a lot of, affirmation and hits from, oh, look at this great video I just put together. And now I just created this new amazing post and people are liking it. And, it gave me a more acceptable way to numb out and disregard what really needed my presence. Our
Mm.
culture actually rewards overworking and holds it up as somehow it's a badge of honor. And that's what some of these coaches are trying to teach people to do, like using words like crush it and all that. And like, if you just kill yourself for the next 18 months or 2 years, then you can live in this way. I am not a believer in that because, first of all, we don't know how much time we actually have left. And secondly, as I've been saying, when I create from my pain body, what I create is painful. And when I'm
Mm.
in ease, what I create is ease. And I actually get to experience ease now, not later, because I've
Right.
sourced it. And so I would just encourage those of us that can run this pattern to be careful about we don't get into a codependent relationship with our own business where we are over giving to the business and over preferencing the business as the most important thing over our health, over
Right.
sleep, over adequate food, and not, drinking enough water, and uh, our relationships. Rest is essential for success. Rest is a marker of success. If you can't rest, something needs to change because rest is a requirement of a healthy, happy life. So this is really what when I'm teaching women who come into my programs, they're either recovering good girls or they're recovering super women, or they might be recovering what I call princesses sometimes, who are just like hanging way out in that state of I have no power, or
Mm.
recovering rebels, which are way out on the other end of smash it all down. These are all forms of codependency we get trained into. And that's why I like to work with the queen archetype, because she is sovereign. She is completely sovereign.
Mm.
So we move towards that sovereign center.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. I mean, yeah, no one had asked me. I've never thought about how I can use work to soothe myself. Like, what? Like, yeah, this is stressful. This is anxiety provoking. This is, like you said, crushing it 24/7, no days off, hustle, hashtag hustle. Yeah, not
No,
soothe.
no more hustling. We're not hustling anymore. We are aligning. Hashtag alignment. Hashtag alignment. Hashtag allowing.
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag self-sourcing, sourcing ease from within. That's what we want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have to watch it, how, I mean, we can use anything to avoid anything, right? I can use my relationship to avoid my work. I can use my parenting to avoid my partner. I can use my work to avoid myself. We just need to bring presence to what's happening in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Rima, thank you so much for coming back. Yeah, I've had such a great experience getting to know you through these interviews. You're such a light. And if listeners, if they're new and they haven't heard the other 2 episodes you've already had, they want to hear more about you, what you're currently offering, where can they go?
Well, you can find me online at rimabonario.com. That's my website. And there's a lot of stuff there to look at. I have courses that I offer, and I open enrollment for my main course, Queen's Court, in December every year. And in November, I have a smaller course called Queen's Counsel. They're both really fun and powerful deep dive. And I'm on Facebook quite a bit. I'm not as great on other socials because it's just, again, these making choices about where we put our time.
Right.
And I would love for those who are listening, who are entrepreneurs, especially spiritual entrepreneurs. I've created a little mini course that I'm offering right now for free that's called Medicine, Magic, and Money. And it's all about how we can take some of these skills and bring them into our work life so that we're creating from this place of a more easeful approach and recognizing we get to define success for ourselves. There's an interview in there that I did with a woman who's a business coach, and then there's a meditation transmission and a 30-page PDF that you can download with different kinds of exercises and affirmations and other kinds of work that can support you in creating a more conscious approach to your work.
Wow.
And that,
Thank you.
I think
Yeah.
you're going to put the link for that in the show notes, right?
Yes, I'll definitely be in the show notes, everyone. So yeah, so click the link, go to Rima's website, check her out on Facebook. I'll put links to all of that. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on. I really love that you are taking on this really juicy and difficult topic and helping women and others who listen to just find their way back to themselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for being here, and we will see you next week. Take care. Hey, girl. It's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster. I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Marissa. Email me, marissa@codependummy.com. Check out codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy, and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please find one.